welcome to the inaugural first episode.
Good pronunciation.
Thank you.
Nailed it.
We practiced that a few times. Postmodern Theology podcast. Welcome in, Dan.
G'day.
How are you?
Yeah, honoured.
Very good. Now, first thing out the way, everyone's going to ask about your T-shirt. So, i4wd.club.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
It is a trade promotion business in the four-wheel drive industry.
Awesome.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Now, you went on a big travel up north Australia recently, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
How was that?
It was unreal.
Yeah?
It was unreal, yeah.
Yeah. How many days was it again?
So we went for 5 days.
Yeah.
There were, let me just count. It was me, Jamie, Maddie, Josh, Hannah, Jimmy, their son, Caden, who's 2 years old, had an absolute ball. Mm-hmm. Michael, Shay, and Paul. So 10 of us. 10 of us
that's
went.
awesome. And how far north? Did you go to Cape York?
No, so we didn't go to Cape York. We went to the Crab Track, which goes through the Daintree rainforest, which was unreal. Mm-hmm. And then we went up to the Lion's Den Hotel in, I think it's Rossvale. Mm-hmm. And then from there we went west to Laura. So Laura is as far north as we went. And then we went south down into an old gold mining town called Maytown.
Yeah. You said that there was like there wasn't even a...
It's not a town.
It's not a town,
nothing in there.
But the road...
It was a town.
It wasn't even like an off-track, like a what do you call it, four-wheel drive track road. It was just like, it was very, very old-school road, wasn't it? It took you like ages to get how many Ks?
The road was built by hand in, I think it was like 1870 from Maytown to Laura, because they were mining gold in Maytown and then taking it north to Laura for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh, okay.
But so and it was pretty intense.
You use Starlink though, right, for all your internet, so you can upload everything. Yeah. What was that like?
Yeah, it's there's actually a few different perspectives on it. Some people are saying that it's ruining camping.
Oh, okay.
Because and this is the first time I've ever been camping where you're in the middle of nowhere and people are around the fire on their phone.
Got YouTube and we got Instagram. Yeah.
So, but I reckon it was unreal because obviously you got loved ones at home. They want to make sure you're okay.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as you pull over and you chuck the satellite on top of the car, you can
I reckon my wife would hate it because I'd probably take my PlayStation.
You can get like 130 megabits per second.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Not even... Yeah. Okay.
Remote.
For those international viewers, we have something called the NBN, which was the biggest waste of money because I think we only get 100 megabyte down. Is that what it is? I don't think we would get that. Maybe 90. And we spent billions.
I only get like 50.
And then Elon just chucks some satellites up in the air and smashes that.
Yeah. If you're remote traveling and you don't have Starlink, you should have Starlink. It's unreal.
It's heaps expensive though, isn't it? Like because you got the one that you're moving all the time. Right? Yeah,
so it's a little satellite that goes on the roof of your vehicle, or you can just put it on the ground.
Do you know how much it was?
I don't know. He had some deal where the hardware was a lot cheaper. So I think the hardware can cost up to like $900.
Okay.
Meaning the modem and the satellite. But I don't think he paid that. And then monthly it's like $100 and something a month.
Really?
Yeah. But if you're traveling remote, and like my mate Jimmy, he has no time limit. Like right now he's down in Hervey Bay, then he's going to Victoria through the high country, then he's going out to Western Australia, and he's going to spend like a year just traveling around Western Australia.
That's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy that he did that. He's going to take over the world, Elon.
Yeah, Elon. I thought you meant Jimmy for a second.
No, maybe Jimmy. Jimmy has a chance, maybe.
Hope he listens to this.
Jimmy,
you're on, mate.
Okay. No pressure, Elon. He's the target.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's pretty cool. I think Starlink, I haven't used it yet, but I want to use it. But I know that people that are doing Bitcoin mining and they're actually tapping into regional sort of like, not regional, but sort of renewable energy sources out in nowhere, and they're tapping into Bitcoin to monetize that energy that otherwise they couldn't monetize. Because there's heaps of renewable energy out there, out in various marketplaces, but there's no, it's hard to get internet. Now with this satellite internet, they can like plug a Bitcoin mining facility there and just monetize that energy out of the ground, which is really, really cool.
Yeah,
like Starlink is opening up a whole new marketplace.
As long as you can see the sky, you've got reception. So if we're on the crab track in the Daintree, it's like thick canopy above you. So we set it up with like a tiny little opening in the canopy of the trees, and we only got reception like every 30 minutes sort of thing. When the satellites go around.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So also you're a young father like me.
I am.
How old's your little one?
She's 19 months.
Sleeping well?
She is now, yeah.
What's it like being a dad?
Yeah, it's unreal.
Yeah?
Yeah, we spent the morning at the pool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Great.
What do you love about being a dad?
What do I love about being a dad?
And your wife is watching.
Yeah.
We're gonna be careful with these answers here.
That's so much. There's so much I love about being a dad.
Yeah.
I have such a beautiful little girl.
She is.
Yeah, maybe I wouldn't
so
say that if she
gorgeous.
was ugly. Maybe I'd hate being a dad. But
I think you love them either way.
She's gorgeous. She's hilarious. She's so funny, man. What do I love about it? I love.
She's got unbelievable cheeks, just for the record.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. She's so cute.
She's adorable.
Yeah.
And the curls in the hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just love watching her grow. Like all these milestones that she hits. Like
Yeah.
sometimes she'll wake up on the weekend a different girl.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like she's
Yeah.
gone to bed, she's woken up, and she's just advanced overnight.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
crazy, eh?
Yeah.
What do you think about like the idea that your daughter has like a soul or a spirit, or the idea of consciousness? Like, you know, obviously there's a body there, there's a mind, there's emotion, they dream, all those things, but there's a uniqueness behind the eyes. Like, well, do you feel that? Do you see that? Like,
Yeah,
how would you interpret like her? I'm not talking like personality. I'm talking about like what makes her her. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Do you think that it's predetermined?
In what sense?
So do you think that because we all grow up to be someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm a very different person now to who I was 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that who she's going to be is already predetermined and she's in the, like, obviously adolescent stage of that?
So we're talking about like destiny, like predestination, like something.
Potentially, yeah, I guess you could call it that.
That's a real complex topic. I do love it. Theology-wise, I kind of stay away from it a little bit, because it's very controversial. But I guess if we're going to talk like physics-wise, we know the Big Bang happened. We know that time, space, matter was birthed in an instant. So having a catalyst, I think it's illogical to think that something can come from nothing. Even though some probably scientists are trying to do that, they give these characteristics to nothing. But the moment you give a characteristic to nothing, it doesn't become nothing anymore, it's something. So the idea of maybe an intelligent mind or a God creating the universe, birthing the universe, would have to be outside space-time matter. So the idea of a God or a creator, and I'm getting back to your point, but that's how I rationalize it in my mind, that God would be timeless because it's outside time, right? So whoever created the universe would know exactly who your daughter is. Would know what happened at the end of the story, before the story ever happened. He was always there. It's time. We think of time differently. So technically speaking, I mean, we don't know, but a story has been written for her, and I think only God is really aware of it.
Yeah, that's, I guess, what the question is from in my head right now is, do you believe that things are predetermined? Or do you believe that everything is free will?
Okay, I think the way I would sort of answer it, I believe we have free will. I think we see it all the time. We have the choice to do this podcast today. We have the choice to live a good life, a bad life, where we drive. So we have free will. But
can that then mean that something's predetermined?
Well, this is what's interesting, is I think if we're going to compare our understanding of free will with whatever created the universe, then I think we're making sort of like a false correlation in the sense that our free will would be like, say, for instance, God's. I think God's free will reigns supreme over anyone else's. But at the same time, too, he doesn't contradict himself. So I believe he gave us the choice. He gave us free will, the ability to choose, because you can't really love something without giving it a choice. Like, we can't profess to love our families if we didn't allow them. We can't profess to love our wives if we didn't obviously give them a choice. Yeah. You know, they've got to be free to be who they want to be. In saying that, God would know what would happen at the end of the story. So then it comes down to, if he were to intervene in someone's life, then do we have free will? It gets super complicated.
Yeah, because
So I think we have free will to an extent, but I think God has the sovereign will to intervene in someone's life.
Isn't that part of the? I could be wrong in saying this, but like the quantum theory is that there are realms or dimensions or whatever you want to call it, where every single possibility is playing out.
That's like the multiverse theory.
Is that what it is?
A multiple, infinite number of universes and an infinite number of possibilities.
Because then, we have free will, but if I choose this, and I could have chosen that, then if I chose that reality is playing out somewhere.
Yeah,
I guess I'm choosing this, and then this reality is playing out.
I guess what's interesting is that like that's when you really start getting into like metaphysics. Obviously,
was it called metaphysics before 2 years ago when meta became a thing? Or
no. Yeah, I think meta is like the idea. I think you've basically got observable things and things that can't be observed.
Like Schrodinger's cat.
Like what?
Schrodinger's cat.
What's that?
You've never heard of Schrodinger's cat?
Tell me.
Right.
Tell me.
Okay.
Has anyone else? Dale, have you heard of that?
Nah.
Are you guys serious?
Okay.
So
what is it?
A guy named Schrodinger put a cat in a box.
Oh, Schrodinger's cat. I think I've heard this.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I could be completely wrong in how I'm about to explain it. Recalling it. But you don't know if the cat's dead or alive until you open the box.
Is that like a tree doesn't fall down in the forest unless you observe it or something like that? Yeah.
That's also like a quantum physics sort of thing, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Did it happen if it wasn't observed? I mean, that's an interesting concept.
But that's Schrodinger's cat. The cat's not dead until you open the box and observe it being dead.
Yeah, that's it's going deep.
Might have to fact check that one. I could.
Well, should
be
we?
wrong.
Hey, Dale, can you check Schrodinger's cat? Have you got Google there? Oh, you got your phone.
Okay,
hey, you got a voice, Dale. You can speak anytime you want. Okay.
You have a laptop right there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Actually, that's true. Schrodinger's cat. Let's check.
Siri. Hey Siri.
Hey Siri. Actually, it might just be easier if I use my phone.
Yeah.
Let me check.
I can't believe you never heard of it.
It sounds familiar. I'm surprised. Let me check. Schrodinger's crap.
Schrodinger's cat. Yeah, I believe it's...
In quantum physics, here we go.
Yeah, I knew it was a quantum physics thing.
Well, it's all got videos. The paradox. If you seal a cat in a box with something that can eventually kill it, you won't know if the cat is alive or dead until you open the box. Yeah. So to open the box and observe the cat is simultaneously
Which is
dead
pretty
and alive.
obvious, mind you. There could be other way. You could shake the box, and if the box doesn't move, then you can probably guess that the cat's dead.
It starts getting pretty deep.
That's without opening it.
You have to bring out quantum physics questions at the start.
Yeah. I mean, the box could smell. That's another indicator that the cat's dead.
Potentially. Well, what do you think?
We're picking holes in Schrodinger's cat's theory.
I'm going to sound so silly talking about Schrodinger's cat and quantum physics. I don't know much about it. But let me ask you this: what do you think about the whole free will thing? Like, what do you think about? You mentioned about Marley, about the idea that her life maybe has been mapped out before her and her destiny. Like, what are your thoughts on it?
I mean, obviously, I can only speak from personal experience, but I've always had a feeling in my life, that everything's going to be okay.
Okay.
Deep down.
Okay.
So the way I see my life is that my life is a movie, and I'm the main character, and then everyone else in my life, you, my wife, my family, they're all characters in my movie. And in some movies, you've got extras that are paid, $100 for the day or whatever, and they just walk by in the background. Do you know what I mean? And then in other characters, they play a massive role. Maybe they're in the movie for like 30 seconds and then they pop out at the end and it all makes sense. So...
There's also a director in a movie and a screenwriter.
Yes,
Did someone write the script for your... Yeah.
But that's I don't know. Has it been written? I don't know.
What do you mean about the idea that you think everything's going to be all right? That's a pretty optimistic view in this day and age. People don't have that.
Always
people
had
are
that
pretty.
feeling.
People are sort of like, what is that? Is that something that you feel like? Is it a mental thing? Is it an emotional thing? Is it a spiritual thing? Like, how would you define that?
I think it's spiritual.
Okay.
I think it's spiritual.
Yeah. Okay.
some people watching this may have the same thing,
Okay.
but I see 11:11.
Ah, yeah. What is
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
So to me, it is whatever it is to anyone. But to
Okay.
me, it's like a check-in from something higher than me saying you're on the right track.
Okay.
But I only ever see it if I'm on the right track.
Okay.
And if I haven't seen it for a while and I'm conscious of the fact that I haven't seen it for a while, I'll think like, why aren't I seeing it?
Interesting.
And then I'll sort of look at the trajectory of my life and go, okay, maybe it's time to tighten this up, or maybe it's time to start doing that thing you've been putting off. And then as soon as I make a pivot, then I'll see it again, and it's like a hug.
Okay.
It's going, yeah, you're
That's
on the right track.
interesting.
Yeah, that, and I've just met, I don't know, like I've met these NPCs in my life that have just popped up and just randomly said to me, "You're gonna be all right."
Okay.
Yeah.
In what context? Like, I mean, NPCs. You mean just random people? You mean? Like, yeah. And
Like-
why? Have you got a specific example of when that happened?
Yeah. Okay. So when I was 20 years old, I drove from Queensland, Sunshine Coast, over to Perth.
Okay. Wow, that would have been a cool drive.
Yeah, 4.5 day drive. It was unreal,
Okay.
and I did it by myself.
Did you go through the middle of Australia, or did you go
No,
down
I
South
went-
Australia, Adelaide, that way?
Yeah, I went
Great
south
Ocean Road.
from Sunny Coast down
Great Ocean
to
Road?
no Great Ocean Road's along the coast
Of Melbourne.
south of Melbourne.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I went out to Lismore, and then Lismore Casino, and then I went down to Tamworth, and then from Tamworth I went through Broken Hill, which is the border of New South Wales and South Australia. Now I went from Broken Hill to Ceduna, and then Ceduna, which is in South Australia, Ceduna across the Nullarbor to
Oh wow.
Coolgardie,
Okay.
which is in Western Australia, and then Coolgardie through to Perth.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
but along the, I think it was in South Australia. There's a lot of little towns that you go through where it's like you blink and you'll miss it. And this town in particular, it was emus, it was a rundown post office, a rundown servo, and a pub. And I thought, bugger it, I'm going to stop at this pub and have a beer. I've been driving for hours.
Nice.
And so there was only two people in the pub. There was a woman serving the beer, and then there was, who I later found out was a woman drinking a beer.
Okay.
So I just went in and just started chatting with them. And the one that I later found out who was a woman drinking a beer was a ranger. And her job was, she got hired to go out to stations out there and kill pests, like foxes, kangaroos, that sort of stuff. And I later found out she was a woman because she was rugged as all hell, man. Like her hands were manlier than mine.
Yeah.
And
She slapped you, you'd feel it.
oh yeah. She just said to me when I was leaving, I was probably only there. I was there for one beer, so I don't know how long that was, but it was one beer. And of course they're like, "What are you doing?" Like some random dude just pops into this pub. And as I was leaving, she just says, "You're gonna be all right. You've got an energy about you. You're gonna be fine.
Okay.
Your life's gonna work out all right." And I've got a couple other.
Were you going through anything at that point in time at all?
Yeah, I was moving my whole life from Queensland to Western Australia.
And was
Yeah.
it nerve-wracking for you?
No, it was exciting.
Okay,
Yeah,
nice. Nice. And what did that feel like, that reassurance that person gave you? Did you feel like that was coming from something other than her, or like something at a higher level or more spiritual level, or how would you define it? Would you think it was just a word of encouragement from her?
Yeah, I don't know.
You think it was something speaking through her?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like that spiritual guidance that's been there all my life,
Okay.
just telling me that.
Would you
it's
call
gonna
that?
be okay.
Would it be jumping the gun to say that maybe it's like maybe God?
It could be.
Yeah.
Could very well be.
Yeah. What's your whole take on God? Like, how would you define that?
So I believe that there is something greater than all of us.
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
What I'm yet to subscribe to is the stories that different religions around the world tell.
Yeah.
And from what I've never deep dived into any of them.
Okay.
But from what I have listened to and heard, a lot of them are very similar. So there has to be some truth in it. There has to be some truth. But I don't know.
I guess the question would be like, how would you know what's true and what's not true? How would you know, like, why pick one religion over the other? Did you ever think that?
Yeah.
Is there any?
For some reason,
Yeah.
God has he can't handle his money, man. Can't handle his money.
Let's talk about that. What do you mean?
Well,
I mean the idea of like churches.
Church is tax free, mate. It's
Yeah,
tax free.
yeah. That's definitely a good gig.
Yeah, he
Religion.
loves money, mate.
He loves
give
money.
us some money at the church. We'll be all good.
You know what's funny? It's interesting that people will say, a lot of people do say that, and I think there's a lot.
I
of
say
truth.
that with a pinch of salt, in no disrespect to.
Man, it's in a lot of ways it's true because you can see so much abuse with money in the churches and other religions for sure.
But
It's definitely.
I just think it's the corruption that flows all through society. Like
Yeah,
the church is
100%.
corrupt, and that's been
100%.
proven time and time again.
There's been definitely moments where different organizations, different churches, religions, whatever, everyone sort of partakes in that corruption and greed for sure. But would you say this? Do you think people worship money?
Some, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like they put money pretty high up on
Oh yeah,
in terms of their values and ethics, right?
Yeah.
Like how do you look at money?
the tool,
It's a tool.
It's a
Tool
tool.
for what?
experience.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah.
obviously
So like, I work in sales,
Mhm.
right? So in order to work in sales, there has to be some, not in order to work in sales, but in order to be successful in sales,
Mhm.
there has to be a motivation towards money.
Mhm.
Whereas my motivation isn't money itself. My motivation is what money allows me to do.
Yeah.
I've had a good life. You know what I
Okay.
mean? I've traveled, I've done a lot, I've lived in excess. Like
Yeah.
with, my wife and I have traveled all over the place and
Yeah.
we don't go without. But it's not because I'm motivated by money. It's because I'm motivated by what it can allow us to do.
Okay. When you say you've had a good life, what do you mean? What do you mean by good? How do you define good? I know that might be like a little bit of a crazy question,
There's
but
been a lot of joy.
okay.
A lot of joy and a lot of pleasant experiences.
yeah,
A lot of challenges too, of course, but
for sure.
Yeah.
But what I mean in the sense of not necessarily like in terms of your of what you did in your life. I mean, you use the term good.
yeah.
What do you necessarily mean by good? How do you define good? Like, because a lot of people would define good in different ways. So
Yeah.
the question is, when you say good, what do you mean by good? You're employing a moral term. So how would you define it? What is a good life to you?
A life filled with happiness.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 And hypothetically speaking, if gambling all your money away made you happy, would that be good?
Well, it's snakes and ladders, that one, isn't it? Half the time you might feel good if it's got a good hit rate.
You feel good when you win.
Yeah.
But I guess
Depends how often you win, I guess.
I guess feeling good, is there a difference between feeling good and good itself? Like, can you associate the two?
Is there a difference between feeling good
And good itself.
and good itself?
Like, for instance, it would feel good to eat whatever you want all the time, right? But is that good for you?
Nah, I see what you mean.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when we use the term good, have you ever even really thought about what we mean by good?
Not until right now. Not until right now. And those neurological pathways have never.
I'll give you an
crossed
example. So like, I had my cousin, right, and I went to my uncle's house to visit, and she actually waited till sort of everyone sort of cleared the room, and she goes to me, "Hey Matt, I've heard you become super religious." And I was like, "Oh, I don't consider myself really religious, more spiritual than anything." And she goes, she hits me with like the hardest question, I think, a difficult question to answer, which would be like, do you think homosexuality is wrong? I was like, wow, I would have liked to talk about easier things straight off the bat, but she came with guns loaded, so to speak. And so I asked her, what do you mean by wrong? And she went, well, wrong. I said, no, I hear what you mean. And she goes, I said, what do you mean by wrong? And she goes, well, wrong. It was we got this. I said, look, are you trying to ask me? Do I believe what the Bible says? And she goes, yeah. I go, and I said, yeah, I do believe what the Bible says. And then she says to me, so you think homosexuality is wrong? And I said, that if that's what the Bible teaches, then that's what I believe. And I think the Bible clearly teaches that. She goes, I can't believe that you would say that. So she got quite upset at me that I said that, right? But then I said to her, I go, well, how would you define right and wrong? What do you mean by it? What is it to lead a good life? And she said to me, she goes, just don't hurt anyone. I go, so that's the standard of morality. That's how you would define it. That's how you would define right and wrong. She goes, yeah, just go about life, don't hurt anyone. I said, so you're against abortion, right? She goes, no. I go, you're fine with babies being aborted the day before they're... She goes, well, it's someone's right to choose, but I thought you said don't hurt anyone.
Yeah.
So the thing is I know I've broached quite a few different topics there straight off the bat, but it's a story that's always hit me quite hard because I think we use the term good, wrong, good, evil, right, wrong, very, very loosely.
Well, can I ask you, what's your definition of good?
Well, I believe that good is like an objective value. I think goodness is
it is or isn't?
It is.
It is.
I think it's like transcendent. And so what I mean by that is I think good is not something that comes from us. I think we recognize it. We can feel it in our hearts. We can recognize it when we look at the sunset. We can recognize it when we go out, bush and we see the stars and the Milky Way. We feel it, right? I don't think that is coming from us. I believe that goodness comes from God. And I think that when you subscribe to any objective value, and I think we all do it, it's like I heard this funny thing that, it's universally wrong to kick your grandma in the knees, right? And I thought to myself, I heard that recently, I think on, there was a good podcast between Stephen Meyer and Joe Rogan. And it was funny because it's true. I think in every culture that's universally wrong to kick your grandma in the knees.
Yeah, I'd say so.
At all times and all places. So the question is what is that? Why do we universally recognize that as, hey, no, that's hitting me?
But I don't think it's good to kick anyone in the knees, let alone your...
I guess so.
Whether it's your grandmother
I guess so.
Your neighbour.
I guess the idea is employing that, the elderly... grandma, so to speak, it makes it a little bit more emotive. But I guess the idea is that goodness and morality transcends us. It's beyond us, but we recognize it. I think we make the mistake of saying that we define it, that we can define it. And I think that's a trap. The moment we determine what's right and what's wrong, I think we become sort of judge, jury, and executioner. I don't want to wear that. I don't want to wear that title. So I think goodness is the idea is that comes from God. I think that he's the only objective source of morality in terms of goodness. And I think we recognize that. We just find it hard to articulate, but we feel it in our hearts. We feel it when we pick our child up. We look at it. You look at the baby and, love, these objective values like beauty and love, and I think these things are transcendent, and everyone subscribes to it, but they want to be able to define it for themselves, when I think it clearly doesn't come from us. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me ask you, how would you explain your life so far? Would you say that your life was good?
My life has been really volatile, hugely. I think before I ever, to be honest with you, I was a self-righteous, arrogant, not a good person at all. And I still don't think I'm a good person. I just think my faith makes me better. Something that transcendent nature of God sort of intervening in your life, and He does the work for you, so to speak, and inspires you. But prior to me coming into faith, volatile, really, really hard, because easily offended, easily upset, easily wronged, trying to like fix all the problems in the world, when I say fix all the problems in the world, there was like a real sense of injustice, like in society, wars, problems, medical tyranny, all these things. Like you could just get angry all the time because you recognize this injustice and you want to do something about it, and you just wear this moral arbiter of the universe thing, and it's sort of like it hits you. And for me, my life was really volatile. And then it's funny, you read stories like in the Bible, like the Adam and Eve story. Whether you believe it literally happened or not, it's quite interesting, like the truth contained in the story of the idea of Adam and Eve eating the apple of the tree of good and evil, tree of knowledge, so that they could decide for themselves and become like God. And they could decide what's right and wrong for themselves. And we look at our society now, and throughout the ages, or even just in my life, like we're constantly trying to define what's right and wrong for ourselves. We're still doing it. And I think by consequence, we want to be like little gods.
Can I ask you a question then? So you're saying that that's how you were?
Yeah.
So seeing all the wrongs in the world and all that sort of stuff, and trying to fix all these problems.
Yeah.
How are you now as opposed to what you were then? How has your view on the world's problems changed?
Well, I realized the only thing that can fix the world is God. And what I mean by that is I don't need to worry about wearing the moral arbiter of the universe. Once I realize where morality comes from God, then the idea of me trying to fix all the problems in the world, that's not me. My mission and my goal now is to talk to people and realize that there's a hole in everyone's heart. And until we heal that, that's where you see real change. You see change in yourself, in your own heart. Like you take a heart of stone and make it one of flesh. And when you heal that and you feel that changes you, and that changes like persons, and then marriages, and then households, and then families, and then communities. I realize that like it starts with one person. Would you say
you're more ignorant now?
Ignorant?
Yeah.
I think I'm aware of how much I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I would say that, the more you study, the more you realize you don't know. So it's a humbling experience. So in all my readings now, you think, wow, you think you know stuff in the past. You have no idea. You have no idea. And I realize now that the knowledge is such a deep well, and so you will never stop learning.
And there's always someone who knows.
And I think you also got to be willing to be wrong.
Yeah.
You also got to be willing to be wrong. So in that sense, my life went from being super volatile, super difficult, a lot of chaos, to a peace that I never knew possible. Like sleeping well, living well, understanding like that when you see peace hit someone's heart, you can't put a price on that. There's nothing you could ever buy to match the happiness that you feel when someone else comes into peace and comes into faith, and just, their life changes. And I saw it with my mate. You met Seb, right?
Yeah. Dreadlocks?
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I'm not allowed to tell this story because he's doing a YouTube video. You know the story.
Seb's got the dreadlocks, hasn't he?
Yeah, Seb's got the dreadlocks. It's a full miracle story. And just to see someone, what faith can do to someone. So yeah, in that sense, I believe that in accordance to what I understand to be good, then I realize I'm not good. I'm trying to be better. So that's how I would define it. So in terms of what my life was like before and after. So it's like you still have issues. You still have problems. But you look at it differently. It doesn't, how you said before, like you kind of feel like optimistic, like you feel like you've been looked after. You really feel that in faith. Like you physically feel that in prayer, and when you associate with other people and you see miracles happen, like you just start seeing the world that that there's something intervening for sure. So I resonate with what you said about that. So now that you understand my definition of good, how do you feel about the idea of like morality and how to define it? Do you think you've always tried to define morality for yourself?
What do you mean by that?
Like,
explain your question a little bit more.
So, like, how would you define right and wrong in your sort of day-to-day living? Like, what's the standard? Like, we all have a standard, you know, like in terms of, you know, what are you teaching Marley in terms of what's the idea? I know she's only young now. It's sort of like, don't throw your food at me.
Yeah.
Stop putting it on the wall.
So my definition of what's right and wrong has clarified since meeting you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you said something to me a few months back that clicked and changed things for me.
Okay.
And that was that I can't remember exactly what you said, but it's about truth.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Is it true or is it not?
Yeah. I think truth. We're talking about the idea of truth being absolute.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, you said about other religions and other things. Like, only one can be right.
Well, they all say the same story mostly, don't they?
I wouldn't necessarily call it the same story. That is often like perceived that way, that everyone has the same story. It is slightly different in many cases, but notwithstanding that, similar sort of religious stories or creation stories, I guess the idea of true can only be true if it's true for everyone, right? Like 1 + 1 is 2, whether we believe in it or not. You and I don't need to believe in 1 + 1 is 2 in order for it to be true. It's true by itself. It doesn't need us. So I think truth is absolute in that. And we live in a crazy world now where we can't even define truth, or that the idea that truth is relative and all that jazz, you know? Like, I mean, we know what we're talking about. Dale, are we allowed to talk about that controversial stuff on YouTube? Do you know? You're the...
Probably algorithm will love
Do
it.
what you want, really.
Oh, we got free speech. We got free speech on YouTube. Kind of.
Yeah.
Put it on X.
So I guess that idea of truth.
Free speech on Rumble, I believe.
Rumble. Twitter. Is it Twitter or X now, Dale? What is it?
It is X.
It is X. Okay, but I think everyone still calls it Twitter. So what was that about truth? How did you view it? Like, how did that affect you? In what way does that affect you about truth?
Your question was what was your question again?
The question is about like what standard of right and wrong do you employ? Like, what are you going to teach your daughter about, like, what's the right thing to do and what's the wrong thing to do?
Oh, mate, that's a hard question.
It's hard, eh?
That is
Like,
a
but
hard question.
is it? Does it come instinctive? Like, because I've seen you interact with your daughter. You're a great dad.
Yeah.
You're so loving. You look after him, and you're already like teaching like hi and bye and all those things. Like,
I'm thinking now, like, you can't rationalize with her now. Do you know what I mean?
no, you can't.
Like,
But I've seen you interact with her. You're a really good dad,
Thank you.
and you love her heaps. And so you're clearly, there's some type of ethic behind that. You know what I mean? The way you treat your daughter, obviously there's some type of ethic that you're employing. I know it's like motivated by love, like me, but I guess when she does grow up, she's going to have questions and about what's the right and wrong thing to do and how to treat each other and sharing and all that sort of stuff. So I guess it's an interesting question.
I think it's love. Like, I just want to teach her love and to express love and be generous with love. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't be afraid to get hurt. Get hurt. But don't let it stop you loving. You know what I mean? You're going to get hurt. Just brush it off.
Yeah.
And the truth is super important because it cuts through all the bullshit. Excuse my French. YouTube, I'm sorry.
Do we get demonetized for that, Dale? This is our first podcast. We're already expecting millions to watch.
Should be right.
We'll be happy if we get 5 people watching. That's it.
I think that's how am I going to raise my daughter to know right and wrong? I need to.
We can come back to that.
Yeah,
we can come back to that.
Empower her to learn it herself. That's how I've learned through making mistakes and realizing my mistakes and not repeating them.
Well, that's the key, eh? Don't repeat the mistakes. Life is certainly a journey. Let's go to this because you've raised it twice now, and I can't just let it go. You say all the religious stories are the same story. How so?
So
tell me what your take is on that.
When I was 16, I watched a documentary.
Oh, we're talking Zeitgeist.
And they listed 200 religions that all have. But isn't that true though? Is there are a lot of religions that have a similar story. So here's my thing, right?
That was really Zeitgeist. I think had three things. Had 9/11, and we can address every
well, there
one
were
now.
multiple Zeitgeists, and I watched them all. The one that
Zeitgeist addendum.
Yeah, that was the
second
banks, the 9/11, and religion
Yes,
was one of them.
that was the original one. I'm pretty sure.
But I think there was one before that, but no one knew about it until after that one came out. The thing that gets me, right, and I was talking to my mate Jody about this the other day, is that they are finding structures, man-made, created structures on the planet from like 40,000 years ago.
Ooh, this is getting interesting
Like
now.
a long
We're going
time ago.
deep. We're going into the ancient civilization, Atlantean.
Yes, because like
aliens.
Go back.
You're gonna be surprised what I have to say
Göbekli
about that.
Göbekli Tepe,
That's
right, in
mad.
Turkey. It's pre-Ice Age.
Well, they say I think antediluvian period.
sorry,
so
it's like
13,000 years ago,
12,800 years
post flood.
Yeah.
So that's that. What's his name? Graham Hancock,
And
Randall
Randall
Carlson,
Yeah.
Joe Rogan. Hectic podcast. So good.
Yeah.
But the idea of post flood, this society built a super advanced place in Turkey called Göbekli Tepe.
But not just
knowledge of
There's-
architecture,
Yeah.
agriculture, astronomy.
Boom. Straight
out of
after the
nowhere.
ice
So the
melted.
theory is it defies the theory of gradualism, that over time we became more advanced. In fact, the archaeology tells us that out of nowhere, where there was supposed to be only hunter-gatherers eating blueberries and deer, okay,
Pretty good life by the sounds of it.
that they just had all this knowledge. So
Yeah.
the theory is there was a knowledge exchange or a pre-flood advanced civilization like Atlantis or something.
Well, there's also
right?
multiple stories around the world of
Yeah.
some man
Yeah.
warning them of the flood.
Yeah.
And there are tales of this in Mexico. There are tales of this in Arabia.
Mesopotamia or like that.
And then how
His
does
name's Noah.
this one bloke, how did
Noah.
he jet set from Mexico to Turkey back in those days?
Well, good question.
My mate Jody says it was aliens.
All right, let's check this out because I'm going to tend to agree with you
About which bit?
about the aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah?
The aliens were warning of the Great Flood.
Not necessarily warning about the Great Flood, but the idea of advanced civilizations and all that stuff. Here's my take. In the Bible, there's this controversial book called the Book of Enoch, right? And in the Book of Enoch, it actually, and not necessarily just in the Book of Enoch, if we go back to like Genesis, it talks about
And what is Genesis?
Genesis, the first book of the Bible, right?
So the very
Like
first...
the Adam and Eve, the flood story, all that stuff, that all comes from, Genesis. But what's interesting about it, in Genesis, it says, the sons of God bred with the daughters of men, okay? So these angels that were cast out of heaven.
Sons of God.
Yeah, which is a reference to angels,
Right.
right? They basically,
What
so
do they say
celestial.
angels then?
Well, this,
Because it makes you think there's more than Jesus.
well, I guess.
He's a son of God, isn't he?
Yeah, well, it's more of a title, but the idea of sons of God, bred with the daughters of men, is this idea about angels being cast out of heaven that followed Lucifer, right? And they bred with the daughters of men, and they created this giant race called the Nephilim. Now, this is what gets crazy, it's the idea of non-terrestrial beings, celestial beings, or extraterrestrials, whatever you want to call them, came down, had sex with women and created this giant race, this evil race called Nephilim. Now, the idea of giants has been throughout all cultures, right? A giant race. Now, this is in the Bible, right?
Wait, so you mean actual giants, not
Giants,
giant as in like there were lots of them.
No, giants,
Yeah,
actual giants, right? And every culture talks about giants. Now, you'll be surprised that all these ancient architecture and all these ancient buildings, and we don't know how they built it. A lot
All
of
the
it.
corners of the globe, and they've got references that match.
And guess what else is all of the corners of the globe? The idea of giants, okay? They all talk about them, every civilization, and they solve a lot of the problems when it comes to building those ancient structures.
It does, eh?
Yeah, and it's crazy because here's where it gets even more nuts, is when you talk about Graham Hancock and Göbekli Tepe and these knowledge exchanges, like these buildings of these half animal, human hybrid alien creatures, exchanging knowledge to these people. In the book of Enoch, which is, it's in certain Bibles, but the New Testament writers referred to it. They actually, these angels got together, they were cast out of heaven, decided to corrupt society by giving them knowledge, astrology, sorcery, alchemy, all these engineering, weapons making. And it's these ideas of these alien-like creatures, right? Non-terrestrial, celestial beings corrupting the society with this technology and this knowledge. A lot of this is biblical, right? It's crazy.
Why do you think we don't know?
What do you mean?
Well, there is so much that we don't know. We don't know how these structures were created. We don't know where we came from. We don't know, from a, like, I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Muslim, I'm not whatever. Like, why do we not know the truth? Where was the disconnect? Because at some point, someone knew. People knew. And now we don't.
I think you'd be surprised with the answer, because I think it's like a magic trick. It's like an illusion. It's so crazy when we don't know how the illusion happened. But the moment we find out, we're like, what?
That's clever.
Right? Like, it was like that the whole time? Yeah, maybe there is a God. Maybe that man was made. Maybe there was a spiritual war in heaven. People lost. Angels lost. They came down and corrupted society. Maybe giants were around. Maybe they built these things. Maybe there was a knowledge exchange. Like these things, it's quite interesting. When we start delving into the archaeology and we start comparing it with the stories, like every civilization talks about a great flood.
And they all
talk about it.
They'll not worship, but the stars are very important to them.
Very
they
important.
built structures purely around where certain
Their
stars
knowledge,
are at certain times.
like the pyramid, is like a model replica of the northern hemisphere. They knew the circumference of the earth.
All the sides equal pi.
Exactly.
Mind you, did you see a kid wrote pi in its full on the chalkboard in the cafe?
Is it? Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, you're joking.
No, I'm not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
A little savant.
It was a kid.
Yeah,
Natalia,
wow.
I said it was a kid.
Yeah, all the smart
all
dude.
like 86 numbers.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That's
sorry.
awesome.
Continue.
Well, kind of lost my train of thought there. I'm thinking about pi. So basically, what were we talking about?
Talking about why
Yeah,
don't
what were we
we
talking
know?
about?
Why don't we know
The
for
pyramids.
sure?
The pyramids. Yeah, so the idea that these people had knowledge, crazy knowledge. Now, what if they did get it from celestial beings?
Why don't we
As
know
it
that,
says,
though?
well, someone does, because it was written in the book of Enoch. And whether we like it or not, we're looking at the archaeology now, and Göbekli Tepe, and out of nowhere, there's people that, knew all these things. How did they know? See, someone looks at like Graham Hancock and think, oh, that guy's a psycho, he's a pseudoscientist. But he's done a lot of interesting research. Even Christians or, religious or theists that might look at him and go, oh, that's all corrupted. But when you actually delve into the research, you look at the evidence, right? So many times we look at, even stories in the Bible, outside the Bible, we look at it and it's like just a story. Well, it's actually historical testimony. We need to be able to actually validate whether it's true or not. I don't think we've got logic and reason to do that. We can try and assess for ourselves whether there's any validity to it. But whether we like it or not, we look at, like, I'll give you an example. When I went to Israel this year, like you look at the New Testament and you look at the book of Luke or Matthew, and they say they went from Capernaum and they went to Jerusalem.
Mind you, all these books that you're talking about,
Totally fine.
No idea what they are.
I'm just giving you an example of the idea that when we went there, we went to these places. These places exist. They're real. Now, when we talk about ancient civilizations, whether ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, or even the idea of Troy, we thought Troy was a myth, okay? And it turns out we dug up the city and found it. That's why people have hope to find Atlantis, right?
Can I say one thing? I think I have an idea of why the idea of truth about a lot of these things has been diluted over the years.
Okay.
A lot of the things you've told me about the Bible, one just a minute ago talking about the sons of God, you said was what did you say that was? It doesn't mean literal, it means...
Well, it's the angels.
Yeah, but why do they say sons? They're not sons. They're angels. Because it makes you think there's more than one Jesus, right?
Well, it depends, because you really, when we get into language,
But
it gets more complicated. Like the idea of angelos, which is a root Greek word, means messenger or angel. So,
but why not just say what they mean? Like they use a lot of references, and like I might have said this, but it's in reference to this. Like I say son, but I mean this.
yeah.
Maybe that's the problem. Is that like there's a lot of things from what you've told me in the Bible that doesn't mean literally. Well, maybe that's the issue, is that...
But we do the same thing with our language.
How so?
Like if we look at the way our language works, right? Tell me what yeah, nah means.
Means no.
You said yes.
Yeah,
nah.
Yeah, nah. Not
Yeah. You know, like,
but like,
that's
if I'm given the task of writing something on a wall for someone to find in a million years about something that just happened, right? Say a giant flood wipes out half of Australia, and half of Australia doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Western Australia would be stoked, right? But I would write a giant flood drowned half of this country on the east. Not a son of God who's not actually Jesus' brother, but it's an angel. Well, I don't actually mean son.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So then in a million years, someone sees it written that a giant flood wiped out half of this country on the eastern side. So where I'm standing right now must have been the western side.
But I guess when we're trying to understand any historical document, we really want to try and understand what the author's trying to convey. So, like, there's certain, like, metaphors and certain
That's
symbolism.
the word I was looking for.
Yeah,
metaphors.
Metaphors, symbolism, idioms. Like, for instance, when
everything's been lost in
when
metaphor.
when the Cowboys won in 2015, I could tell you if I wrote down what an earth-shattering event that was for Townsville, and then in 1,000 years they look at it and go, the earth shattered in Townsville. This guy wrote that. No, because I'm just describing how much of a big event it was in Townsville for us to win the NRL premiership, in 2015. Pretty sure it was 2015. Anyway, the point is that in order to really understand any document, we really need to understand the context, what they're writing. This is why when we talk about truth, sometimes we inject so much meaning in there for ourselves. We really, in order to understand any document, we need to understand what the author is trying to convey. That's half the problem.
The language was at that time would help.
The language and all those things, and it's quite crazy because...
Do you agree, though, that a lot is lost in metaphors?
Oh, I don't know. I kind of look at it like poetry. I think like you look at, language and you can see when you really start to delve into it, it's amazing. Like you can have the same experience reading your favorite books, whether it be Harry Potter or Shakespeare, whatever. When you really delve into how the author's conveying meaning, it can blow your mind. It can really blow your mind that they have such a thought process behind it. Like I there's heaps of that in the Bible, but obviously half the battle is trying to find out what is literal, what is metaphorical, all those things. But either way, there has to be a truth. We've already agreed that truth is absolute. What that truth is, it's a search and discovery, right? So we're never going to know everything. Okay, I think that's the whole point, is that our minds are finite. We're not going to be able to know everything. But I think we can always keep searching and keep trying to discover what's true.
I just ponder where the disconnect was.
Yeah?
Do you know what I mean? In our timeline.
Well, we can look at now. How about now? You talk about disconnecting truth. Let's talk about our modern society.
Yeah, but even 200 years ago, they didn't know how the pyramids were built.
We don't even know what a man and woman is today.
Yeah, not the truth.
Okay? So when we want to talk about truth, we can look at our society and we can see that things can get lost. When things get lost? When people don't speak the truth.
Yeah.
That's when people get lost. That's when societies get lost. And that's what's happening now.
Let me ask you your opinion on this vote coming up.
Oh, the vote.
Yes.
The vote. Ooh.
Because you probably know more about it than what I know.
I honestly don't know too much about it. But there's a vote for...
to change the referendum.
There's a referendum to change the constitution to allow a body to represent First Nations people of Australia in Parliament, exclusively representing the First Nations people. Now, for me, I know that it's so passionate either side, the yeses and the nos. It seems like at the moment the papers are pointing towards, and all the polls, not that I believe much in what the mainstream media has to say about it.
But they're saying yes.
No, they're actually saying that the polls are swinging no. But again, like I don't believe what they have to say anyway, one way or the other. But based on what I'm seeing in my localized perspective, I'm seeing probably more people against it. I think after COVID, regardless of whether it's a good thing for First Nation peoples or not, I don't know too much about it, why it would be or why it wouldn't be. But I can tell you after COVID, everyone's distrustful of government. They just don't trust government anymore. And they don't want to give government more power. Now, does it give more power? I'm not sure. Does it centralize power? It probably looks like that.
I think the thing that
I know all First Nations people aren't necessarily on board for it. There's probably a majority of people, a majority of First Nations people that are for it.
Yeah.
There's probably some that's against. I mean, that's how it's looking like in the media. But again, how can we trust the media? How can we trust what government has to say? I think ultimately the Australian people will decide. But it's looking like a no. But I wouldn't be surprised if it gets across.
It's a knife's edge once you start changing things that dramatically, because you're creating a divide.
Okay. This comes down to this idea, right? This comes down to this whole idea of when we were speaking about right and wrong. Why are people looking to government to save them?
I don't.
I mean, I know you don't, but you would say that a lot of people do that, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people look in the government to, solve my money problems, solve my inflation problems, like solve the medical problems. So that's really not what the role of government was, but it's becoming a savior-like role.
Yeah.
We need this, we need that. I'm oppressed. This, like, people are enslaved by the there's real people that are victims. There's real people that are oppressed. I admit that, right? But then the government's not teaching people how to get out of it. They're teaching them how to stay in that mentality.
Yeah, because the government needs people to be dependent on it in order for it to thrive.
Yeah, they're basically putting people in such a way that they don't want them free from that. They want them enslaved, because I think a society enslaved by whatever they feel that they're oppressed by is as easily manipulated and controlled by giving them essentially what they want. But this comes down to this idea about the hole in the heart. I mean, no one is ever going to solve your problems. Like, if you're overweight, right, and you need to lose weight, there's no amount of, whinging about it that's ever going to make you lose your weight. You can't get enough government. If you get money off the government and get your meals paid for and all these things, you actually have to get out there and start training and start actually doing good things for yourself. You need to get out of that mentality of, I'm a victim, and go out there and make a change. Even if you are a victim, even if your parents taught you to eat whatever you want and you grow up super obese, in some ways, you are a victim. But either way, in order to get out of that, you need to make a choice.
Yeah.
And say, I'm going to make a change in my life. Now, that's really hard to do. That's really, really hard to do. And we're back from the toilet break.
We were talking about headphones earlier and you told me to stop. So on the trip we did up north, I went with a bunch of army blokes who all brought their rifles with them.
Yeah.
And Jimmy, I was talking about earlier, had army issued headphones. Mm-hmm. These things are insane.
What's an army issued headphone?
I can't remember what they're called.
Pelletors?
Nah, I can't remember the brand of it, but you can hear, it's like super hearing. Like it magnifies all the sound except when you fire your rifle.
Yeah. Pelletors, yeah.
Oh, what are they called?
Yeah, we got them here actually. Hang on.
What are they called? Pelletors.
Yeah.
Sounds like a dinosaur.
A different brand.
Pelletor.
Pro here or something. But they're mental.
Really?
Yeah. So you can
apparently Dale's got some.
You can turn them up. You could hear like a bloody spider crawling on the ground over there.
Pelletors. Can we get a little plug? Dale, you can come into the podcast camera. Come on. Or just throw the headphones at us.
These ones may have been different. Maybe it's like the same concept, but a different brand.
You wouldn't believe this, Dale. Even after the first podcast, everyone's wondering what you look like.
Actually,
they're not like a part, but yeah, like you put them on.
For the audience, they look like normal headphones.
Yeah. But you can actually, you can hear incredibly well with them on. You can turn them up. Cool. So like you could hear something crawling through the bush that you wouldn't hear without it. But then when you shoot the...
Don't tell my wife. She'll probably make me wear them at home.
Yeah.
So.
when you fire the weapon, though, they go quiet. You don't hear the weapon fire.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
My mate is ex-army. Shout out to Chris. Still shoots his rifles and things like that. So I'll ask him about that. Palator. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's what we called him in the army.
Okay, cool.
Can't remember where we left off.
We were talking about the voice. So basically,
Yes.
in terms of my view, I'm happy to talk about anything about the voice and politics and like that. But I feel like because society is so polarized at the moment, you know, and they get so easily offended. My main message is, guess what, guys? The government is not going to save you, no matter what power you give them. I truly believe salvation for me is only in Christ. Like, I really do believe that. I think it's the only truth. Like, and I mean that's the only way that our hearts can be healed, where you actually see change. You know how you spoke before about like every religion saying the same thing, that Zeigeist thing. It turns out that that's not necessarily true. I wouldn't even say necessarily. It's actually really untrue.
Right.
Because when you go down and you look at the primary sources for those claims, like Mithra or Dionysus being the same story of Christ, born of the Virgin Mary, died 3 days later, Horus, the god Horus, and all that. When you go into the primary sources and you actually look at it, see, because the Bible is the most popular book of all time, and everyone has the primary sources available to them, okay, we can just pick it up and read it. The bottom line is that we can see in the primary sources of those other documents about ancient Greek gods and that, they don't say that. But the claim is made, and if you could do enough clever video and imagery and things like that, you can convince people. We're back again. Anyway. So when you get into the primary sources, they actually don't say what they say. I actually saw
What do you mean by the primary sources?
So where we get this information from,
And by this information, do you mean the claim that?
Yeah, like that Dionysus, the Greek god Dionysus of wine, had the same story, or as Jesus, born of Virgin Mary. When you go into the source documents about Dionysus, they don't say that.
Yeah, right.
So it's like misinformation. I'll give you an example. I saw this Instagram reel. It was so cool. Like I decided to make a video about. Apparently, there's this evidence that this ancient Chinese emperor made a claim that the sin of the world had been forgiven on the day. On the day that Christ died. He wrote about Christ's death, and it was like there's this Instagram reel. I was like, I was going to make a video about this. This looks awesome. Anyway, so I make a point of going to the source document, and I was struggling to find this primary source document, right? Because you saw this guy, this professor, you know, on a. It's going around on Instagram heaps about this Chinese emperor that wrote about Jesus, and it's like, how did he even know about Jesus? And so I went on to the primary source document, and eventually found the Chinese document, and it's all in Mandarin. I'm not sure what language you call it. Not being disrespectful, but I just don't know. But I started going through all the document and trying to find where they talk about it. So I eventually found the chapter and the verse, and I translated in Google in multiple translators, and it said something similar, but not what the video said.
Yeah, right.
And I had this mad reel organized. It would have been so cool. But turns out when you read the actual document for yourself and translate it, it's not true. So it sounds quite a cool story.
That documentary that I watched, Zeitgeist,
Yeah.
its claim that there are 200 religions
They have the same story of
have the
Jesus.
same story.
Yeah, not true.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Any truth in it?
I mean, not the same story of Christ.
Because the things that I remember from watching Zeitgeist that it claimed were similar in these 200 religions.
The things that they talk about that were true is all the astrological
born
signs.
of a virgin,
Yeah.
12, what are they called?
Yeah, 12 apostles
12
or
apostles,
disciples or whatever.
Disciples, yeah. Died for 3 days or 7 days or whatever it was, resurrected.
Yeah.
Are those things the same in all
No.
these other religions?
No.
No?
No. So it's you'll find there's similarities in certain aspects, but when you actually go through, you realize actually the likelihood. How can I put it? Right. When you actually look at the story of Christ, you can read the book of Isaiah, which has been verified to be written like 800 years before Jesus. You can go to multiple different Old Testament books prophesying about Christ, about his death, his resurrection, all those things. The likelihood, like probability-wise, of these prophecies being fulfilled are astronomically high. Like that, like it's miraculous that even one of them actually happened. Like you can literally read the book of Isaiah and you see Isaiah 53 about Christ being crucified. Like 800 years, 1,000 years before Christ, King David, who now have we actually found a lot of archaeological evidence for the existence now of King David, and that's only been recently, I think, in the last 50 years or so, something like that. But regardless, he wrote prophecies about Christ being crucified. So the likelihood of just one of these happening is crazy. Christ apparently fulfilled 200 prophecies, hundreds of years before he's written. And these aren't just like those Nostradamus quatrains where like there's going to be a bushfire in Australia type prophecy, like a self-fulfilling one. These are like time sequential prophecies. You'll find that very, very, very rarely, if not any other religious book has prophecies like the Bible.
So wait.
Because no one wants to predict the future, because we agree that time, space, matter was birthed in an instant. No one can know the future.
But Jesus did.
Well, the idea of God being outside time, space, right? God can know the future, but we can't. We physically can't. We're bound in this universe. Every fortune teller, everything, like we have the laws of nature. We can't know time, like what happens in the future. But you will see, like, there are crazy prophecies in the Bible, like crazy. What I mean, like crazy, like you can see, and a lot of scholars argue about Daniel, the book of Daniel when it was written, because Daniel is so accurate about the way the world was shaped between the Babylonian, Persian, Greek and Roman Empire and the arrival of Christ. Like he predicted all of it. They actually say that, a lot of scholars say that it's history faked as prophecy. But so there's a bit of debate about when it was written. But a lot of it was written before the events that actually happened. And it all came true.
When you say it was written, who wrote it?
Well, there's a big debate about that too. But in the book of Daniel, I think the earliest manuscript evidence that we have of it is like 200 years before Christ. So we know it was written plenty of years before, but there's a debate about it was written in 600 BC or around the 2nd or 3rd century.
Man.
Yeah, by man. That's the beautiful thing about the Bible, is that it's
Who was that man?
Oh, look, we have more information in terms of who were which writers. There's certain books in the Bible that we sort of guess who wrote it, but it doesn't discount the evidence that is in the book itself. So
That's something I'm very curious about, though. I've never thought of that before. But who wrote it?
Yeah, well,
who is the author?
Well, there's multiple authors. There's 66 different books in the Bible written by man. The good thing about the Bible is that you can actually find that if you look at other religions, like you'll see that there's apparently like a divine tablet or book brought down by heaven, and this is like a divine book that can't be argued with, but it's like written in human writing, it's written by man. The Bible has the take that it is the inspired word written by man, that the Holy Spirit inspired the book. So
has the author's name never been carried through history?
Yeah, no, there's multiple authors. That's the point. Like you got Matthew, you got Luke, you got Mark, you got Peter, you got Paul, you've got Isaiah, you got Daniel, you've got.
So when you say the book of Daniel is the author.
Yeah. It's certain books are attributed. Right?
What do you mean by that?
Like they're attributed to certain authors through tradition, and some authors we actually...
Do you mean rewritten?
Not necessarily rewritten, but like for instance, there's in the book of Daniel that is considered scripture for a very, very long time. The question is there's been debate about when it was written, but they know it was written by Daniel, right?
Because when you say the book of Daniel, I think it's a book about Daniel.
Well, yeah, it is. Like, it's a book about his experience and what happened in Babylon. Like, it's a crazy story. If they make a movie about the book of Daniel, it would do really, really well. Like, it is a crazy
So
story.
it's Daniel writing a book about his experience.
You could pretty much say that, about what happened.
Yeah, right.
And he gets these crazy dreams and writes these prophecies about what's going to happen in the future. And the reason why there's so much debate about when it was written is because if it was written,
Wouldn't you put a date?
well,
Especially if you're writing the book yourself about yourself. Wouldn't
Well-
you put a date?
well, I guess that's the whole point. Is that what happens is that there's this certain world events are so well renowned. you know,
They know when they
like
happen.
they know what happened. Like
Yeah.
the whole story of Daniel is that Jerusalem and Israel got destroyed by Babylon. Babylon went to war with them, and they took all the Jewish people as slaves.
Yeah, well.
And he was part of that first exile.
They've had a tough run, haven't they?
They have throughout millennia. God's people.
Shout out to Mendy. He just had a baby girl.
Oh yeah, who's Mendy?
A Jewish mate of mine from Brazilian Jewish.
Oh,
from
really?
Bondi. Yeah.
Shout out, Mendy. Well done.
Shout out,
God
Mendy.
bless.
He might even watch this.
God bless you, brother.
Maybe.
Boy or girl? Boy?
Girl, yeah.
Girl. Awesome. What's the girl's name?
I didn't catch that.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, God bless. Good health to you guys.
Yeah.
It's my point is this. The reason I raised all that stuff because you mentioned before about the idea that, these stories have been copied. Now, you can verify this for yourself. You don't have to necessarily believe me. But let's say hypothetically, have you ever thought about, like, what if the story is true?
Well,
Like the
as
story
you're
of
saying this, I'm thinking this question right now. So, you as a Christian believe that the Christian religion is the only truth.
Yes.
So, the Muslim religion, you believe it's not true.
I don't believe it's true, no.
Jewish religion, not true. Judaism,
It's hard. That's a harder one, but
because there's a lot of similarities, a lot of
well,
cross
no. But
paths.
the Old Testament is the Torah. That's their Bible. The Jewish Bible is the Old Testament,
Yeah.
and Christians see the Old Testament pointing towards Jesus, and you can actually read it for yourself.
What? Okay, I'm getting too many questions in my head.
And so we wouldn't necessarily refute what the Jewish people believe. Like, we believe that their scripture, their Bible, and our Bible, the same, points to Jesus. They don't believe Jesus is Messiah. That's the difference.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't necessarily what they believe is not true. We just disagree on we disagree on who Jesus is.
So what makes you believe? Wait. People of other faiths would also believe that their faith is the one true faith.
Yeah.
But your theory is they're wrong.
Okay. And I think that is an awesome question, and it's a fair one. Okay. Because it's a bold claim for me to make.
And it's not
Right.
just you, of course.
Yeah, of course. But you're talking to me. I'm going to make that claim. I believe that's true. And the reason why I believe that's true, for instance, when I look at the Islamic faith, and it's not like I haven't read the Quran. I haven't read the Quran in full, but I've read quite a bit of it. Okay. And I know that, people might get upset at me saying that. And I'm not here to misrepresent anyone's faith. Okay. But I have studied quite a bit of it. And this is the strange thing. The Quran says it's true because of what the Bible says. Surah 1094.
Wait, say that again.
The Quran, the Islamic faith, is built on the Christian faith.
Right.
So they believe it's true. So Prophet Muhammad said that in Surah 1094, that in order to verify if the revelation of Muhammad's true, go to the Christians and the Jews. This is the revelation that has already been revealed to you in your scriptures. They're saying it's true because of what the Bible says. The problem is when you...
So their religion refers to your religion.
Yeah, they say it's true. They say Allah and Yahweh, the God of the Bible, is the same God. And they say it's true that he's the last prophet. They believe in Jesus as a prophet, that he was born of the Virgin Mary, that they say he didn't die, he rose up in heaven. They really revere Jesus, but they don't see him as God. And the point is that their whole religion is based on what the Bible says, but the problem is the Bible doesn't say that. And this is the issue.
Does the Bible refer to any other religions?
No, I mean, it refers to the idea of false gods and false idols and other pagans, and so in some ways it does, but the Bible says it's true because of what God says, and the Quran says it's true because of what the Bible says. The problem is when you point out the contradictions that the Bible doesn't teach this.
I'm just trying to get my head around that.
Yeah. When you point out to a Muslim that, hey, the Bible isn't doesn't say what your Quran says. It contradicts your Quran. So you're saying the Quran is true because of what the Bible says. Well, it turns out the Bible doesn't say that. What they then say is the Bible's been corrupted and that their book is the new truth. But whether you like it or not, when they ask them for evidence of corruption, there's a lot of scholarly debate about this, and you can watch Islamic apologists versus Christian apologists, and they have their way out. But whether you like it or not, the Quran needs the Bible. And this is the point. Every religion needs to account for Jesus. Jesus is so good.
Every religion. That is a bold claim. Every single religion refers to Jesus.
I'm not saying they refer to Jesus. I'm saying they need to explain Jesus. Jesus is so good and his teaching so revolutionary, it changed the world. Therefore, he's like a Buddha in Buddhism. He's like Christ enlightenment in New Age. He's a prophet in Islam. He's God in Christianity. My point is that you need to account for him. Jesus impacted the world so heavily. Whether you like it or not, do you believe you should treat people the way you want to be treated?
No.
You don't believe that?
I believe I should treat people the way they want to be treated. Because you don't want to be treated the same as what I want to be treated.
Like, do you want to be treated well?
Yeah.
Yeah? And do you believe that you should treat people well, like respectfully?
Broadly, yes.
Yeah, so that's basically the principle about treating people the way you want to be treated. Do you want, to love thy enemy, to forgive, these concepts. The idea that Jesus, through his death and resurrection changed the world, it actually did. And it was prophesied that would happen. My point is that there's a very famous quote by a guy called C.S. Lewis, and he was a Christian philosopher. He wrote the Chronicles of Narnia. He was good mates with not T.S. Eliot, good mates with J.R. Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings, okay? And he wrote a quote, and it really sums up this whole argument, that Jesus is either liar, Lord, or lunatic. Okay. And this is the reason, is Jesus' teachings are good. Every religion says Jesus' teachings are good. Okay, no one says that he's a bad guy, right? Maybe you might get the odd person, but the vast, vast majority say that Jesus' teachings are really good. Here's the problem. You take any good historical figure, and it could be someone that's living today, for instance, or someone that you know, someone that you really value, respect. If they ever told you that they were God, what would you say?
If anyone that I respect told me that they were God,
what would you say?
Prove it.
Okay. So you would be inferring, if they couldn't prove it, you're either a liar, or you're a lunatic.
Yeah.
You see my point?
No.
So
not quite. It's not as simple as that. Because if they can prove it, then I'd believe them. Okay.
But that's
not
you just summed up C.S. Lewis's thing. No good person with good teachings is a liar. No person with good teachings, inherently good teachings and a good nature, you would call a lunatic. So he must be the third alternative, which is he must be what he says he is.
Yeah.
Now here's the crazy part, and I want you to consider this. And I'm not telling you to take it at face value, right? I'm not telling you to take it at face value, but and I want you to check what I say. But here's the crazy part. Whether we like it or not, we know that the 12 apostles, these 12 disciples, right, the vast majority of them, if not all, except one, but we know all of them were tortured, persecuted, hunted down by their own Jewish brothers and family, like they were ostracized. The Roman government persecuted them. And the long story short, because they were preaching a message that this guy died and resurrected, all right, called Jesus. And the thing is this. They weren't calling to arms. They weren't calling people to go to war for revolution in the sense of let's overthrow the Roman government. They were preaching love, grace, and mercy.
What year was this in?
This is in the first century. This is in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, right?
So
of the first century.
Years ago.
2,000 years ago, right, approximately. So here's the take. This is what I want you to consider.
So this whole thing is a pretty young thing in the grand scheme of things. Like 2,000 years ago isn't that long.
I mean, in terms of maybe 13,000 years of recorded human history, yeah, probably not. But the biblical story goes back about 3,500 years, right?
Yeah, right.
To Abraham and all that. But I want you to consider this. Every one of those disciples ended up being martyred. There's argument as to, how that happened. And the story of John, he died of old age, but he was tortured. But notwithstanding all that, they had the choice. Like Peter was crucified and Paul was beheaded. Now, all they had to do to live was to say it didn't happen, to recant their evidence. The Roman government says, we'll let you live if you say this wasn't true. They would rather die, and they paid with their lives to say it happened.
Yeah, wow.
Whether you like it or not, it happened. And we're going to die for this. Now,
What happened to John? How did John get out of that? They didn't catch him?
John was tortured. He was dipped into a pot of boiling oil from early church tradition, persecuted by the Roman Emperor Nero. It's debated.
Wait, say that again. Early church tradition.
Yeah, so
Church
in early
of
church history, so the
What
early
church?
church fathers, like the Christian church, right? So it was only one church
What was
in the
that?
beginning.
So there was a church before Jesus existed.
No. So church, the root word for church is ecclesia, which is like which means assembly, church. There's even interpretations about the called out ones.
So it wasn't a Christian church.
My point is Christ talks about two or more of you gathered together and talk about Him. He's there. So it's about the idea of the gathering of the faithful, and you can go anywhere to church. This was the whole concept. About them coming together and glorifying Christ. That my point is that I wanted to get this point. These guys, no one dies knowing it's a lie.
Yeah.
Like people lie to get out of dying.
Yeah, to run away from.
But no one lies knowing they're going to die. They don't lie to give up their life.
Yeah.
So we know they had to believe it. So they paid their lives with it. So the question is for us, is what they say is true?
I have another question.
Because if it did,
how do we know that that's true?
Good point.
That there were 12 disciples and that they did die and get dipped in oil, and how do we know that that's true and not made up?
Well, it's interesting. So let's give an example. One of the greatest persecutions of Christians happened under the Roman Emperor Nero. Now, the Roman Emperor Nero, we know, was a real Roman Caesar. He was a psychopath, right? This guy burnt down half of Rome, right? And there's actually an old tradition about whether or not he was playing, a musical instrument while it burnt down. But basically, what happened is that he was a really popular Roman Caesar, and then he decided to become a real psycho and do terrible things. He lost the popular vote. Basically, he lost public opinion and public confidence, and then he burned half of Rome down, and he blamed it all on the Christians. We know about this because we have amazing sources from Roman senators and Jewish historians from the first century writing about this guy, and we found archaeological evidence to back it up. So the way we find out if things are true, we take historical documents, we've got archaeological evidence, and we kind of marry it up with other evidence as well. And that's how we get these multiple angles, and that's how we actually view what happened in history and get a good idea. And so when we look at, for instance, the Roman Caesar Nero, like it's attributed that he did the massive persecution. It was so bad what he did to the Christians. We know from Roman sources, these are non-biblical sources, mind you, like Tacitus and Suetonius and even Josephus, but we know that what he did to the Christians was so bad that even these Roman senators felt sorry for the Christians. Now, they didn't even like the Christians. They thought that the Christians were cannibals and incestuous because they drank the blood of their savior and this thing that they do because of communion. And they call each other brother and sister, and even their wives, they call each other brother and sister, so they're incestuous. So they looked at these Christians as really bad people. So that's their context. Even they felt sorry for the Christians, what Roman Caesar did to them, Nero. So my point is that the way we know it's true is that we look at these variety of different sources. That if it's like Christ is the standard by which we measure a historical figure actually even existed. There's more historical testimony written about that particular event than any moment in history.
Yeah, wow.
Something happened.
Which event? The 12 apostles being tortured, or that?
No, like the story of Jesus, of him dying and resurrecting. Okay? There is more historical testimony about that.
Maybe he wasn't actually dead.
Well, you know
We just had
what?
to sleep for
Do you know
3
what's
days.
funny? You're actually coming up with really good points because that's one of the big debates about whether
I'm
he
just
died.
trying to like logically explain.
No,
things.
they're great questions.
Maybe he
because-
wasn't dead.
Well, that's actually one of the things,
It's
right?
like Mike Tyson when he broke his back. He didn't really break his back.
Well, this is interesting because when you actually go into it, and this has been debate about whether or not he died. When you see the historical crucifixions, dude, the Romans perfected torture. These guys knew how to kill people.
Did they have a religion?
Yeah,
The Romans?
Yeah,
What,
yeah.
What was their
it's
religion?
based off the Greek religion. They had like
there a
Zeus, Hera, all that thing. Oh, I wouldn't call it. I mean, it's a pagan religion. They have the polytheists. They believe in multiple gods.
Yeah, right.
Right. They had the god of war, Ares. They had the Jupiter, which was Zeus. You know, he was the head god. And anyway,
But
got
then
the
didn't
god of the sea.
Romans all
Nemtru.
become Christian at some point?
Okay,
Because that's where Vikings comes into it too, doesn't it?
No, not necessarily, but but the Roman through Constantine they adopted Christianity as the official religion, and you have to know that Christianity didn't actually go to war with the Roman Empire. Yeah. Well, this is the thing, man. Is that the question is whether or not it actually happened,
That's my question.
right?
How do we know he actually died?
Well, here's the thing. There's been an interesting amount of debate about it, but whether we like it or not, we know that he was condemned to death. Okay, Pontius Pilate. We know about the trial of Jesus. He actually went to a trial. He got convicted.
For what?
Well, that's a funny thing. He's asking like the best questions. Okay, so Jesus went before the Jewish high priest. Jesus went before the Jewish high priest and professed to be God, and he got condemned to death. That was the highest blasphemy that you could commit. Right? The high priest tore his robes open, and then under Roman law, only the Romans had the power to execute someone. They took that power off the Jewish people. So they took him before Pontius Pilate. He was the governor of Judea. And Pontius basically interviews him and says, man, this guy's not guilty.
He's God.
No, he didn't say he was God. He didn't say he's God. He just says, this guy's not guilty. He just knew this guy wasn't guilty. This guy wasn't guilty of what these guys were saying he was.
So he believed that he was telling the truth.
Well, he believed that whatever they asked him, that whatever they're saying, this treason that he did, it wasn't true. But in the end, the leadership at the time, the Jewish leadership at the time, they actually said to, they basically put Pontius Pilate in a bit of a bind. They basically said, this guy claims to be king. Who is your loyalty to this guy or Caesar? And he basically had to condemn him to death. Because if this guy's professing to be king of the Jews, then he'd be competing with Caesar. Anyway, he gets condemned to death. Now, the way the crucifixion happened.
Confused for a second here.
Mm-hmm.
So Jesus said to a Jewish priest, I am God.
Didn't use those exact words, but
Because isn't he the son of God?
Well, this is interesting. He uses multiple titles. He's Mashiach, Messiah, Son of Man, Son of God. There's multiple titles that he takes. His most favorite one, he's even the Son of David. He's got multiple names, right? But what he said to the high priest was he actually said he used the scripture from Daniel. And there's this scripture in Daniel which is quite strange.
Jesus used the scripture of Daniel.
Yeah, he quoted.
Daniel was written before Jesus.
Yeah, and he quoted Daniel to the high priest, and he says, "You will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand, like you'll see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven, seated at the right hand of power." Now, that is a moment from Daniel 7 where this Son of Man, like character, is given glory, dominion, and a kingdom, and all nations and peoples and languages will serve him and worship him. And he says that, like, he says, I'm that guy to the high priest. The high priest just goes, blasphemy. Only God deserves worship, not you. So, in a way, he was saying he's God. He didn't use those exact words, but the implication condemned him to death.
So do you see Jesus and God as separate?
Well, you're going to get into the Trinity, dude, and it's like basically what Christians believe is that Jesus is the God-man. He's God made flesh. So we spoke about God creating space-time matter, right? So technically speaking, we can't know that God because he's immaterial, spaceless, he's timeless. We're 3D dimensional creatures. Like, we think in 3D. We can't know that God. However much you want to profess to know that God, you can't because he's outside space-time matter, right? So the idea that God transcended reality, became man so we could know him.
So Jesus was God incarnated as man.
Yeah.
Okay.
God made flesh.
Continue.
Yeah. So the way we know that he died is that he basically he got sentenced to death, and he got sentenced to scourging. Scourging was like being whipped with like a cat of nine tails. And he got whipped like something like, how many times was it a day? Was it 38 times or something? Now the way this would work is that they had these
Like
Roman
lashings, yeah.
Yeah, they had these like bone fragments and like and metal fragments, and what would happen is they would whip you, but they would flick the wrist and they'd pull out muscle, right? And they whipped him so many times, one lashing before death, right? Front, back, he basically had muscle and flesh coming out of his body. It's like he was ripped from the inside out, right? Really horrific. Then what happens after he gets whipped to the point of death, nearly death, 39 times. So yeah. So basically what happens there is that one of the reasons he didn't bleed out, he's actually got, I'm pretty sure he got whipped at the end of winter, at the start of spring. And he got whipped in the morning, and it would have been very cold. So imagine getting whipped like early, like when you get cold and if you ever get hit with a stick or something, it hurts. So the blood would have constricted too. So, because a lot of people thought he should have died just off that. He should have died just off that. He would have bled out. Well, it turns out he got made to carry the cross up the hill, and then he got crucified. Now, do you know how you actually die from crucifixion? You actually die from suffocation. Sounds weird, right? But what happens is you actually get, they put a nail actually at the base of your wrist. There's argument about whether it was the center of your hand, but it looks like it's the base of the wrist, and it's between two ligaments, and they can actually hold your body weight. And what happens is it cuts like the nerve in the middle of your hand. Now, have you ever had nerve pain?
No.
All right, nerve pain, like a pinched nerve or back, it hurts, man, really bad.
Yeah.
And what happens is your whole body weight is being hung up, and you've got nerve in your foot. So you get hit in the nerve, severs the nerve in your foot. It sits under your ligament here so it can hold your body weight. Now, when you're hanging up on the cross, you can take a breath in, but you actually can't breathe out. You have to pull yourself up to exhale, and that's how you suffocate. Now, what happens is now his back's been tortured up against a rough cross, right? Every breath, he's having to pull on those nerves and breathe, right? What ends up happening, your lungs can fill with water, right? You basically are slowly dying to death. If that wasn't enough, he actually died, right, on that cross. There was eyewitnesses. The Romans knew it. The Romans knew how to kill people. This guy was sentenced to death, right? They were perfectionists at this, right? They were masters. When he died, there was a massive earthquake and eclipse, and crazy things happened. They got a bit scared. Now, the other two guys next to him, because it was two thieves that were sentenced to death, they weren't dead yet. So they broke their legs. And that's how they used to make sure they were dead, is that when they broke their legs, they couldn't lift themselves up. They couldn't breathe, and they suffocated. They didn't do that to Jesus. For some reason, they didn't break his legs. So they knew he was dead. But just to make...
maybe he wasn't dead.
Well, just to make sure, they stabbed him in the side, and out came blood and water. It's really, really crazy, because that description of blood and water coming out of the side... in the early church, a lot of the time they thought that it was either like a metaphor or symbolism, because water can't come out of your side of your body, right? But we've learnt now that either it might have been the spleen or the pericardium, like the sac around the heart. There's multiple areas here that can contain water, and it's actually medically sound for water to be able to flow out with blood to being stabbed in the side here, especially if like your spleen or the heart, the sac around your heart gets touched, out will come water. There's like a fluid like water. Like, I'm not sure if you've ever seen like plasma. It kind of looks like water. So it's not unreasonable, right? So then he gets buried for 3 days, right? So my point is that...
I thought he was put in a cave.
Well, yeah, a tomb, they call it. But either way...
Why did they put him in a tomb?
Oh, that's how the Jewish people got buried. They got buried in tombs and graves and things like that. And then they dug them up and put them in these things called ossuaries. It's really complex. They had a lot of traditions. But either way, this guy was dead. Like, the evidence points to
So
the
he
fact
was
that
buried underground.
Oh, there's argument as to where he was buried and what have you, but yeah, it was the idea that he was buried in a tomb with a big rock that sealed it. Anyway, my point is that it impacted the people enough that, like, you can't survive that. Like, if those descriptions are true, that's what you got to ask yourself. If, as they describe it, that's what happened. And remember, Tacitus, who's a Roman senator, commented on Christ dying. Josephus, a Jewish historian, comments on it as well. So you've got multiple sources talking about how this guy was executed. Tacitus actually talks about how Pontius Pilate executed this guy. So it's not just the Bible writers with an element of bias. You've got to remember the motivation. Like, why are these guys risking their lives to tell this story? And then something happens, man. It just goes viral, like first century viral. And it just spreads like wildfire. And they're not going to war. They're just loving on people. This idea of the Holy Spirit pouring out on the nation. They're just seeing signs, miracles, and wonders, and crazy things happen. And just people just start believing and having faith. And they're getting massacred, man.
Yeah, right.
But they're still believing. Yeah, and they're still believing. And in the end, 300 years later, to take over the Roman Empire, not with a war, but with love. Crazy. Crazy story.
And so what, then he moved the rock from the tomb?
Well, the idea that an angel moved the rock, yeah. Angel moved the big stone, and then he came forth, and then there was 500 people that saw him. The apostles saw him. He spent 40 days here, and then he ascended into heaven. That's the story.
Yeah, wow.
It was a story worth that not just the apostles, but many Christians after died. Many. Jesus' own brother, James. Jesus had a brother.
So Jesus had a brother?
Jesus had a stepbrother, yeah.
How does Jesus have a stepbrother?
Well, his mum was, the story goes that she was impregnated by the Holy Spirit, had Jesus, immaculate conception, but then Mary was married to Joseph and they had other kids, and he had a brother called James.
So
James,
half-brother.
Yeah, or stepbrother, half-brother, whatever you want to call it. But
stepbrother's just by marriage, or is
okay, yeah, fair enough.
Blood.
Okay. And then he becomes the priest of Jerusalem, of the Christian church in Jerusalem, and then he gets massacred.
Oh, wow.
His own brothers didn't believe that he was the Messiah or the Son of God until after the resurrection.
I got another question.
It's like information overload.
So Jesus,
hey, listen, if this is too much.
No. Jesus was born by Mary, yeah?
Yeah, his mum's Mary.
Birthed by Mary. So
yeah.
Jesus grew up with James.
Yeah, dude.
Kids playing marbles in the dirt.
We don't know a lot about his early story, but yeah, we could assume as much, yeah.
And then at some point when he's how old? He goes, oh, by the way, I'm God.
So basically, see, Jesus wanted to keep that under wraps a lot. He didn't want everyone to know about that at the start because there's things that he needed to do. Now, when it came to his story, we know there's a couple stories of him being young, right? He had to escape to Egypt because King Herod was like massacring, heard about this prophecy of a king being born, and he just massacred all the babies under 2 years of age. Wow. He escaped to Egypt, and then there's a story about him young at the temple teaching all the wise teachers as a young boy.
So he grew up as Jewish, is that correct?
Yeah, Jesus was Jew.
Right.
Jesus is Jewish.
Yeah.
Anyone tells you that, they don't know what they're talking about. Jesus is Jewish. Actually, Jesus' real name is Yeshua. Jesus is the transliteration of Jesus, the Greek name for...
so before this moment of Jesus dying,
mm-hmm.
the Torah was a thing?
Yeah, that was like the Old Testament. Yeah, the Jewish Bible, Torah. Yeah.
And they worshipped God?
Yeah, Yahweh, the Father, that immaterial, spaceless, timeless God.
And then Jesus was the incarnation of God, the human incarnation.
Yeah, they separate the Father and the Son. That's where these titles come into it.
Yeah.
They're the same God, but they're distinct, that the Father's the spaceless, timeless, immaterial, that the Son is the incarnation of God, right?
Sounds like my father.
Yeah, my dad thinks he's God too.
Timeless, spaceless, immaterial.
So yeah, like that's the story, man. And I mean, it's a cool story. Question is it true?
Is it true?
Because if it's true, change your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just, if I had undeniable evidence, I would believe it.
Well, 100% proof, right? This is the thing. We all live by faith, even you. Like you can't prove the sun will come up tomorrow.
It's highly likely, but
You can't prove
can't
it.
prove it. Yeah.
You have faith, because otherwise, if you didn't believe that, didn't have faith on that, on the laws of nature, you should have no reason to believe why the laws of nature should be constant. I mean, if we're just a cosmic accident, there should be no reason why the order should stay to be order.
Well,
But if
it's also the fact that it has come up for 31 years of my life and many more before that.
Sure,
My
but
daughter is 19 months old. She's blown away when she sees the moon.
yeah.
Blown away.
Yeah,
My God.
Yeah. So,
But when she gets to my age, she's going to have full faith that the moon's going to come out in its cycles.
shit, what the word you just used?
Yeah,
Faith. And that's the key. We all live by faith, every one of us. Like, we have to have faith in our wives, right? Can you prove that our wives will be faithful to us? We have 100% ankle bracelet. We're going to find out where they're going at all times. But the bottom line is, we all live by faith, brother. We all live by faith.
Yeah, I think there's some
and it's just a question of what we put our faith in. We put our faith in ourselves.
there's some blind faith. There's
Well,
some blind faith, and then there's
quick toilet break. Blind faith. New topic. How do you timestamp things, Dale? No, don't pause it. Just tell. I'm sure YouTube wants to know. Like, how do you timestamp things? Do you know?
I don't know.
Are you serious? And you call yourself a producer,
Mate, we learn off YouTube.
mate? It's getting the sack.
I learn heaps of stuff off YouTube. YouTube
All right,
has made
we'll
me a
YouTube it.
Hilux mechanic.
Well, look, we were talking about blind faith, but blind faith. I need more water. Blind faith.
Yeah. So my point is,
I don't think blind faith is a good thing.
but you to quote you earlier, it's a great story if it's true.
Well, I believe it to be true. Yeah.
Blindly.
No, I think it's reasonable to believe it's true. There's a lot of evidence to show that it's true. I got the fluff from the earphones. Yeah, no, I think it's reasonable to think that it's true. Yeah. I think there's a lot of evidence for it. And I think I've tried to break it. Don't worry.
But
I became a Christian trying to break Christianity.
so you have faith that it's true, but we don't know for an absolute 1,000%.
Oh, yeah, that's the faith
that it's
element.
true.
Yeah. I think all the evidence points to the fact that it's true.
Maybe
I believe it
blind
to be
faith
true.
is a little bit too
Yeah, blind
aggressive
faith is like
in saying blind.
I believe it like I'm not willing to be wrong. I don't care what you have to say. You can make up all your excuses, and that's not what the Bible teaches. Actually, the Bible teaches to defend. You got to be able to defend the faith, and so it's the idea of actually, being able to reason with people and be able to talk with them. You have to be open to be willing to be wrong. And if you're not, then I don't think you're going to have an enjoyable conversation anyway. You know, if you're not willing to be wrong, I'm willing to be wrong. If someone can provide good evidence to show that Christianity isn't true, I'd be happy to believe it. But it seems that all the evidence points to the fact that it is true. I every way I look at it. And then on top of that, you've got this idea of personal spiritual experience, but that's a very subjective process. You know, a lot of people can have sort of something similar in that regard. But I think the evidence points to the fact that it's definitely true. Yeah. So, are you ready to confess Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior? I'm sorry to put you on the spot there, but how about this? Something a little sidetrack now. There's i4wd.club.
.club.
You're wearing the shirt.
And?
We'd like to give it a little plug. That's
Yes.
i4wheel drive. I4 for those on the
WD.
podcast.
Yes.
I, the number 4, wd.club. What is it? Tell us
Also the
about it.
website. The website is www.i4wd.club.
Nice. What is it? Tell us what it's about.
So i4drive.club is my little passion project. So I love going off road. I love breaking my car and fixing it, and modifying it, and making it more capable, and the places that it can take me that a normal car can't, and the experiences and camping, and I love all of that. So my dream is to be able to do that all the time and get paid for it. Right. So
you got that. You got the Instagram page too. Yes. Like you've got like nearly 30,000 followers on that,
so
right?
37 now.
Oh, 37.
Yeah, I think
it's
so.
gone up heaps since I
think
last
it's
checked.
36 point something.
Oh, that's awesome. Well done. When did you start that?
October last year.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's like within a year, 37,000. That's crazy.
It's
yeah, and so you upload photos and videos of like all these different four-wheel drive stuff.
More of my own original content, but it's kind of like a the social media is kind of like a notice board. It's like a community page. I share awesome content.
Yeah,
you know, and it's not all mine. No way. Like majority of
a lot of people send you stuff. You told me like
sent a lot of stuff. I see awesome stuff and share.
And you get you pick what's like the most exciting because you got heaps of clips.
Yeah, and when I started, it was like I'm going to share the stuff that's got like heaps of engagement. But I'll stop that now. If I see it and I like it, I'm sharing it. I think it's cool. People post their content because they want to show other people, and I magnify that for people on the Instagram. But the idea is, the whole goal with it is I'd love to be able to build an insane four-wheel drive every month and give it away.
Oh, nice.
Give it away. That's the goal.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. So I've done one giveaway so far. It was
How did that go?
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, what did you give away?
We gave away a Sabre kinetic rope recovery kit, which is worth like $1,000. So it's just for those of you watching that don't know, it's like a big rope that you can use to recover a vehicle from a stuck situation.
Yeah.
But they're kinetic, right? It's like a big rubber band. So when you say this is the stuck vehicle and this is the car that's recovering it, and it goes like this, and that rope wants to contract and pull it out.
Yeah, mad.
So a kit of different, like
and you posted this on your Insta?
Yeah.
How do people find you on Instagram?
i4wd.club.
That's it. So it's all the same. That's so good.
The website, Instagram, Facebook, it's all the same.
That's awesome. So we've got Facebook, we've got Instagram, we've got... do you have YouTube on there too?
There's nothing on there. Only the advertisements are on there.
Okay, cool. So Facebook, Instagram, and we've got the website as well.
Yeah.
And where do you
YouTube will be happening more. So
as you start doing your own content.
We've got some stuff coming up.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
If you ever start a podcast, will you have me on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sweet. Absolutely. I've got a FJ Cruiser. I just don't know how to...
We're just going to put some stuff on there.
I don't even know how to...
Get a winch.
No idea about four-wheel drives, dude.
Yeah, you're going to cut the cape, mate.
Man, I'm hoping to do that next year, and I'd love for you to take me.
It'd be amazing.
Yeah, I'll just follow you.
I'm coming too.
Yeah.
You coming too, Dale?
What are you driving, Dale?
100%. Corolla. Can we get that up there?
Sabre off-road.
I'm just going to get a roof rack and put Dale on top, right?
I'm down.
No, that would be awesome, dude. You know what would be sick if we could film that experience, like, and if we had Starlink too. I mean, we can even upload heaps of stuff on the trip too.
The plan was to go to the tip next winter.
Yeah,
but now we're kind of thinking maybe a little bit different. We're kind of thinking maybe going south.
Okay, nice. Okay. Well, that's with that big crew, right?
So yeah.
How many of you went up to this last trip?
10 of us went up.
And you expecting maybe a bit more to go the next time round?
Well, it's kind of.
Are you going to invite people along with you?
On personal trips, it's like invite.
Okay, by invite on personal trips. Okay, but are you thinking about doing an i4wd.club trip, like maybe for potential followers?
Man, I'd love to. I would love to have the freedom and flexibility to travel the country and go and hit local tracks with locals.
Well, let me tell you,
it would
God can do impossible things in your life.
Yeah.
It seems like you've already been touched a little bit too. You know what I mean?
God.
Yeah, maybe. You never know. Like, you spoke about it. You always feel like you're getting looked after, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I really do.
Mate, whether you think you can or can't, you're probably right.
I really do hope that this you make this come to fruition, because I think you're an awesome dude. I think you're great to speak to. You've got a great family, man. You've got a lot of good things happening for you, man. I think you've got a great outlook on life too. Like the fact that you're willing to sit here and cop me talking to you for like nearly 2 hours. I mean, that is just well done.
I love it.
And I really wish the best for you, man. I really pray that God blesses everything that you're trying to achieve in life, man. I think you will make a positive impact in people's lives, and I think you're enjoying the journey. You can see that, man. That's awesome.
Likewise to you, mate. You've already had a positive impact in my life over the last couple of months. So.
Thank you, man. That's awesome. I look forward to many more moments. All right.
Cheers.
Maybe that's a good sign off.
We're signing off there.
Thank you, brother. God bless you, brother. And thank you for being on this podcast, man. Take care.
Pleasure. Ciao.